Are you a bumbling man? Do you not know your elbow from your asshole? Well, you just might have what it takes to be a dad. Or at least a Mr. Mom. Welcome to Half-Ass Movie Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Half-Ass Movie Podcast, a show where we put together a half-ass theme as an excuse to watch movies. My name is Adam Portress, and joining me today, he's got a load in the dryer right now, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
220, 221, whatever gets it done.
And he was the inspiration for the inept father, Bruce Leslie.
I hear sounds that no one else can hear, and it disturbs me.
Listen, you know, everything can go bump in the night once in a while. You just don't just cover your head with the covers. That's what I do. Just don't, if you ignore it long enough, it goes away.
Then your toes stick out.
No, you got to do that because you got to have a little airflow in the evening. That's at least, again, these are how I flow and everything. Everybody's different. Different strokes for different folks. So welcome back, everybody. We are joining in on our Michael Keaton month. We dropped two big old Beetlejuice bombs on you here and everything. So we figure, let's go back and talk about some other Michael Keaton films. But I think now we actually have to. Have you heard this, guys? He wants to go by Michael Keaton Douglas at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or at least I think at least maybe when he's directing or something like that. But he does want to have the Douglas put back on the old last name there.
There are a couple of Batman posters where he asked him to put Douglas on there.
So he could be going back to that there and everything, and maybe once Michael Douglas kicks off, he can just kind of reclaim that crown there and everything. Is that how SAG-AFTRA works, where you just like Highlander?
There could be only one Michael Douglas. I don't know.
And then once one goes, he's
that's going to be something else because his dad lived to about 100.
That's true.
His dad lived a much harder life than he did. So we shall see.
He will be one of the last ones in Hollywood at this point if you go by all the history and everything. Well, we'll get into so this week we're doing Mr. Mom. Bruce, this was your film.
Yes, this is one that goes way back in my memory. I mean, I don't know if like Mr. Mom was part of the lexicon before this movie was made, because this movie was made so early in my life. I wouldn't have remembered or been in a situation to have anyone say Mr. Mom before that. But it's just kind of like a time capsule to me. And it's the first movie I ever saw Michael Keaton in. I know he had some work before this, but it's still probably the oldest thing of his I've seen. I've never seen Night Shift. I think that was the movie right before this that managed to catch people's attention so that he would get cast in this one.
Sean, your kind of recollection of Mr. Mom?
I saw this movie early. I saw this movie probably 8 or 9. I remembered thinking that Mr. Mom was funny. Like, he is funny. But I didn't remember much about it. Like I could remember before I saw it this week. Like I could remember that, like the chainsaw scene and the vacuum cleaner that came to life and the kid with his blanket. I remembered those 3 things, and that's all I could really remember from it. That, and also that the house was always filthy. That was the other thing I remembered. The house just felt so cluttered and claustrophobic, but that's on purpose.
I feel like I remember seeing it on WJCY back in the day. That's probably about probably somewhere in the 90s, probably mid 90s, where they were just play something on a Saturday or whatever. And like a Mr. Mom would be something that they would just kind of throw in there on account of they had the rights to it or whatnot. But I only, ever vaguely remember bits and pieces, your kind of grocery store stuff and the roundabout crazy things that he's doing in the house and stuff, your vacuum cleaners and whatnot, that kind of stuff. So those things I vaguely remember, but like, as far as I was concerned, this is a fresh watch for me.
And when would you say was
basically for me too.
Okay. Sorry, that answers my question. I was going to say, when do you think was the last time you saw it, Sean? Because I would dare say the last time I saw this would have probably been 86 or so. Like, so it might as well be a first time for me too, other than just remembering the name and that it had Michael Keaton in it. In fact, the most distinct memory I have relating to Mr. Mom is, I don't know if you can recall this or not, Adam, but I'm sure you do remember it, Sean. but on NBC, there would be like interstitials in between the primetime shows where Johnny Carson standing in front of his curtain would say like, tune in tonight when we're going to have so-and-so on. You don't want to miss it. Something like that. And I remember him saying, tune in tonight. You don't want to miss it. We're going to have Mr. Mom himself, Michael Keaton. And this had to be like a couple years after Mr. Mom had come out, but it was like enough of a hit. It was sort of, like what Superman himself, Christopher Reeves. Well, Michael Keaton was Mr. Mom up until he became Batman.
I was about to say, before Batman, that's what he was known for, I would surmise. Yeah.
Well, it's the thing that made him. It's the thing that made him a headlining movie star. I mean, he was in Night Shift, but he was not the lead in that. And this was the one that they took the gamble on him with, and it totally paid off.
And the director of Night Shift, Ron Howard, was their original choice to direct this, but he wound up directing Splash instead,
which is crazy because Keaton turned down Splash to play Mr. Mom. So that is bananas.
And, you can do worse than having to choose between a project that's going to help Tom Hanks go over the top or a project that's going to help Michael Keaton go over the top. I mean, win-win there at least.
Yeah, either way you win.
We'll get in.
And if you fail, you call your brother Clint up for some money.
Exactly. Clint can fill in. He can do that job. Real simple. Before we get into all that, though, we do want to say a giant thank you to the people who support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, and soon coming, Sean loves spaceships. It's going to be a big old time. We got a new patron this week. Ross comes in at $1, but Ross is from the UK, and as is my understanding, that's the equivalent of, let me do some head math here. I think that's like $78 US. So, wow, thank you so much, Ross. Thank you so much for that. Ross, it's a time to assume that position because you are about to be bequeathed with the internet's greatest honor, your H&P nickname. Take it away, Sean.
So, Ross, I only have one other Ross that I've ever known. And the thing about him is that Ross was the type of guy that if he showed up somewhere, he's a fire starter. So things are either going to be amazing and great and the best time of your life, or it's going to be a living hell. You can't figure out what it's going to be. Ross came to a party that I was at, like somebody was just having like a house party, and I don't mean like kid and play house party. I mean like, like grown-ups with wine and dinner.
No.
And he showed up at this house party one night, and he brought his buddy with him, and he literally said the line, I will remember it for as long as I live. He goes, "Hey, we're planning on getting Blacksies tonight," meaning blackout drunk.
Blacksies. I've made it cute.
And he did. And then he proceeded to do so. And that was a living hell. The only time I have ever been banned from a bar for life is because Ross showed up.
Oh.
and immediately said to me, for somebody who how did he put it? It was something like, for somebody who should be for somebody who has a good time a lot of the time, you sure aren't having a good time right now. And then just lined up shots on the bar.
Oh no.
And yes, I proceeded to expel every bit of anything that had been in my stomach for the last 3 days in the bathroom. And it did not make it all the way to the toilet. And I got banned for life from that bar.
Nice.
I'm not blaming Ross. That's on me. That was me. I could have said no, but I wanted to see what the other side looked like.
Ross with the assist.
I didn't get Blacksies, as Ross would say, but I did have a bad time. So Ross from the UK, your HMP nickname from this point forward is Fire Starter.
All right, not too bad. I was thinking you might go a different way on that, and so I was like, "Don't say that word. That's inappropriate for this program, even for this program." That's saying something. If you would like to be like our good buddy Firestarter, head on down to patreon.com/HMP. Join up at any level, and if you're outside from the U.S., I'm going to do money conversions live on the show, just like you heard. It's a talent of mine, and I feel it's my duty to share it with everyone. Patreon.com/HMP.
Adam's a math magician.
What can I say? I just kind of like, ooh, that 3 disappeared. You thought that was a remainder? Gone. Completely gone. Email us at halfasspod@gmail.com. We'd like to hear from you, or drop us an iTunes review or a Spotify review. Tell your neighbor, shake a tree, do whatever you want to do, man. We really appreciate you guys doing this week after week, month after month, and year after year. Let's get into it. Here is the IMDb plotline for Mr. Mom. As we all know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. After he's suddenly laid off, a husband switches roles with his wife. She returns to the workforce, and he becomes a stay-at-home dad, and he has to take care of 3 young children, a job he has no clue how to do. This was written by John Hughes, who would, of course, go on to write National Lampoon's Vacation, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The list goes on and on and on. Directed by Stan Dragatti, I believe that's how you pronounce that. He directed a movie called Dirty Little Billy, Love at First Bite, The Man with One Red Shoe, She's Out of Control, and Necessary Roughness. Starring Michael Keaton, Terry Garr, Martin Mull, Jeffrey Tambor, Christopher Lloyd, and Edie McClurg shows up for a hot second, which is always fun. Bruce, Mr. Mom. What
destroys as she usually does.
Oh, of course.
She never fails. Was she a groundling? Is that where she came from?
She is, yes.
Because I remember you went into it during Ferris Bueller, and I sort of, the details got a little stirred up in my head, but I was trying to remember what you had said.
Yeah, she's in that class too. She's in that like magical groundlings class where with Paul Rubens and Phil Hartman. Like that's where she was in there. And she is a John Hughes favorite, and with good reason. She is amazing.
Yeah, she's in like 5 seconds, but a delight nevertheless.
I bet her TikTok would have been off the chain back then.
Indeed. So, Bruce, what brought about Mr. Mom for us?
Well, it's my first memory of Michael Keaton. You know, I didn't know who he was before Mr. Mom. Mr. Mom was a big hit. I think people got to kind of understand that $60 million at the time, when there's no streaming, there's not a ton of home video, at least not where I'm at. I mean, that's a pretty good box office. People have to have something to talk about. So like now a $60 million movie is not something people talk about. It's one that gets ignored. But then a $65 million movie, you know, that was enough people were talking about it, that it was in the public conversation. It was no Gremlins or Ghostbusters, but it was right there.
Well, listen, I mean, you know, 1983 money, that's pretty darn good. The one you really should compare it to, especially because the year before with E.T., it didn't make E.T. money. Of course, E.T. was like number 1 for literally 22 weeks, and you're like, how is that even bloody possible? So, you know, but the $64 million is not chump change in 1983 by any stretch of the imagination. That's a wild hit.
Especially when you didn't spend that much money in the first place to make the movie, because you got Michael Keaton's first role, like first starring role, headline role. It's not like you're spending millions of bucks to put him on camera.
Fairly contained.
Pretty low budget. Yeah. Like maybe spent 10 million max on this bad boy, and probably 65, something like that.
Yeah.
But this is also, in my opinion, this is the movie that is the reason people were shocked Michael Keaton was cast as Batman. I mean, I'm old enough that I was into a little bit of the conversation going on the news, and, you know, some of the older kids talking about their thoughts on the casting. And it was a real-time conversation that Mr. Mom couldn't be Batman. Of course, we know time has proven all those doubters wrong, but that makes this movie kind of historically significant to me, because we all kind of have special places in our heart for that 1989 Tim Burton Batman.
Oh yeah. Now
I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I realized something watching this, because you know when I think of Michael Keaton, I think of giant movie star who, you know, is great, Michael Keaton. But in this movie, I turned to Lindsay at one point and I was like, "Is he a good-looking guy?" And she goes, "He's basic as hell. He's like the most like guy next door guy ever." And I was like, huh, because I don't think of him that way. I always think of him as Michael Keaton. You know, it's impossible not to. But when you don't have all of your own baggage that you're bringing to the table, like I do with Michael Keaton, like it's kind of hard to believe just how every guy, normal Joe, he seems in this movie. And he really is. And so I started looking at this movie through that lens of like, oh, this is literally what like every dude in the early 80s was like.
I mean, he's from Pittsburgh. He's salt of the earth. His introduction to show business was working with Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
I mean, how more like salt of the earth does it get than that story?
But yeah, he doesn't have that
surprised
look
to
him,
see.
it works.
I'm sorry, I had notes here, so I was just going to move.
No,
it down.
go ahead, please.
There.
No. I was just adding
I was surprised to see that Aaron Spelling produced this because I didn't remember that from my recollections about this. So I kind of looked into that a little bit. Aaron Spelling, I think his biggest hit at the time would have been, television stuff.
Yeah.
This was initially developed as a television movie. This is going to be like your movie of the week on some channel on television. And you can kind of feel that from the opening music and the way it starts out. But as it was going along, the studio felt good enough about it to give it a theatrical release. And, I think they're glad they made that decision.
Aaron Spelling's, I don't believe this story at all. But in an interview, he said that he tried taking his family to the movie theater one time. Yeah, okay, Aaron Spelling, sure you did.
No.
And there was nothing for the whole family to see. And so he decided that he was going to make one of those movies for himself. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, Aaron. Sure.
That's a load and a half.
That's exactly what I thought the second I heard it. And the second I heard it, like, it's one of those things where you're like, you what now? You do you expect anyone to believe that you took your family to a movie theater, Aaron?
I just can't. I can't see him sitting in a chair.
I like the idea of him and Tori just at each other's throats about what to watch in the lobby, and they storm out angry. Like him and Tori Spelling screaming because they can't agree on a movie.
He wants to watch Blazing Saddles, and she's like, "No,
it's a film studio."
Just ridiculous. Just so stupid. But
again, hold on one second. Not for nothing, this movie comes out in 1983. Did I just not say the movie that came out in 1982 for 21 weeks called E.T. that was the biggest family film in history?
Ever of all time.
Okay, but nothing for the kids out there. Get out of town.
I'm telling you, the little wrinkly scrotum creature freaked out Tori. She wouldn't go.
I just find it so hard to believe. Like every aspect of this is just such horseshit, but that's what he claims.
I'll tell you what else I saw claimed, and I guess we'll go ahead and get this out of the way. I don't know what you feel about the script, how tightly you think it was written. I don't know if you think it could have been better or if you think it's perfect as is, but the person initially working on it got fired, and this guy got brought on who gave us this finished product. The person who got fired, the person who came up with this idea from a personal experience was John Hughes.
Right.
Well, he's the credited screenwriter. So who do you someone else you think?
He kind of came up with the idea, and then we get this, which I don't know. I don't think it felt very John Hughes. And now, I've lost the name of the person who came on and did that instead. But I know I've got it in here somewhere. It
felt to me like there were hints of Hughes that you could hear
writers.
From time to time.
Aaron Spelling fired John Hughes and brought in his TV writers. So it's like the people that finished it are not necessarily recognizable names.
That's strange, because what I have heard about this movie is that originally they wanted Hughes to direct it also. And he said that he wasn't comfortable directing yet.
Because I had always, as of like 2 hours ago, Ron Howard is the only directing name I saw attached to it, but there's a ton of stuff I didn't get a chance to look at.
There's a really great documentary on the Blu-ray version of Mr. Mom. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched bits and pieces of it.
So,
the Apple, was it Apple? Are you talking about the TV show thing?
No, the Blu-ray that came out a couple years ago on Mr. Mom.
I didn't know that existed either. Okay, so I thought this must have been a new thing that was out on Blu-ray. I didn't know that this garnered that sort of re-release.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when the behind the scenes documentary was filmed. Put together. But it's all of the interviews are old. Like, with the exception of I think they got Ann Gillian to talk.
Yeah.
about her experience, but that's about it.
Well, they got some of the kids to talk too, though.
Oh,
when they're all
right.
grown up.
The kids are on there too. The adult, the
Yeah, they're
adult
like
versions of the
50
children. Right?
now.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's probably, just from what little tiny things that I'd seen, looks like it's probably somewhere in the early 2000s when they probably did the interviews, I would say.
It's definitely not a modern doc.
Now
or they could just be bad doc makers now. Come on now.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I love this movie. I'll play that card a little bit early, but I'm also going to call it out on some malarkey, because there's no shortage of malarkey, at least for the modern viewer. At the very least, you can say there's no shortage of malarkey.
I want to put that on the poster. Mr. Mom, Bruce Leslie, no shortage of malarkey.
and some of that malarkey, I think, stood in the way of you being able to enjoy the show a little bit, Sean. Just, some of the stuff that they put in here, which is so over the top, can also be kind of insulting, right?
Well, look, I know that they're playing it for laughs. Like, I do know that. There's certain moments in this movie where I'm just like, come on, man. Like, the guy's never done laundry before. I find that very hard to believe, even for a dude in 1983 who's the main breadwinner in the house. Of course, he's done some laundry before. They treat it like all of these things are just like completely foreign and alien to him.
I'm gonna just say, like, man, Michael Keaton, probably about the same age as my father. And I remember after his third divorce, maybe, when I was an adult, like clearly a working, functioning in some ways, adult, I think I remember teaching my dad how to do laundry.
Wow.
Like, when I'm maybe 30. So there is a generation where your mom did your laundry. When you go to college, I guess you quickly find a girlfriend to do it. I don't know how this stuff works. It never worked out for me that way. I mean, my family, we all do our own laundry. My kids have been doing their own laundry for a while now. So I just kind of thought that's a thing, that's not really gendered. But right. My dad never did his own laundry. Not to mention that there is a generation where the laundry machines advance the way like cell phones have, because there's a certain age of person who's not real comfortable with all the apps on their new cell phone. Sure. I imagine maybe there were some dads that didn't know how these newfangled washers worked.
Maybe, but I did have difficulty with a few things at the once the gag starts of him being at the house, by himself with the kids.
Yeah. And I call that malarkey.
Yes. That part was difficult to watch, because as somebody who is a single father for a very long time, and, I'm working a full-time job and doing all of that stuff. Like, it was like, come on, man. Like, are you having trouble putting all the meals together? Then you make them all on Sunday. Like, that's how you do it. That's how I did it. That's how a lot of people do it.
As a person who's never once said, I wish I could spend a little less time with my kids, that also kind of played weird to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to call the thing out on its malarkey, but I still love the film. It makes me feel safe in a way. It takes me back to being really young. It's just kind of simple. It's just not even a sophisticated retelling of the City Mouse, Country Mouse story when you break it down to what it is.
Right.
And I can see why it would be made for TV, because every sitcom out there had this episode at least once.
Yeah.
Where they trade roles. I was going back to probably Ozzie and Harriet had to do it one time. But it just kind of works, because there was a time when, like I said, you might only have 2 screens showing movies in your town. And that meant if one of them was rated R, the only one you were going to go see was Mr. Mom, like it or not.
Well, that's fair.
But it does start off with some interesting things too. Again, like a sign of the times. But this guy carpools to his job. There's 4 people in the car. They're all wearing identical, like, brown suits and ties. But then he gets to work and he puts on like that yellow cover-up coat and the hard hat, and he's down on the floor. And I feel like they really, really wanted to try hard to somehow give this guy a job that could relate to both blue collar and white collar workers in the crowd. Like, they were really trying to 4-quadrant this sucker.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. They made it. They got a foot in both worlds. But the problem is when they're doing that scene specifically where he's clearly lying to them about having seen Rocky.
Yeah.
And and they even call him out on it, which I think is great. Like that's the way that should go.
I love that whole. I mean, the movie starts off great with that.
But the fact of the matter is, an engineer, when he shows up to something like that, there's going to be more than just 3 bored-looking line guys there. You know, like that's not the way that goes. Also, him being an engineer, it almost same level as like the stupid, like, I don't know how to do things stuff. Same level of anger, close to same level as of anger as when he and Martin Mull are, and he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna take all the drywall out, put up new drywall, and he goes, oh, what kind of electricity you gonna put? Or he goes, what are you gonna put in 220? And Michael Keaton, an engineer, doesn't know what he's talking about. Get
well, just an engineer, an automotive engineer. You know what I mean? And
get
the
out of
advertising, that goes the other way. That joke should be going the other way.
There is no way that character doesn't know what 220 is.
And let's be honest, like, I mean, have you met a couple of engineers? They're pretty nerds, and they wouldn't be as absent-minded as he is with all of this. If anything, they're over-analytical of things.
Yeah, could you picture an engineer having the fiasco with the washing machine? I don't know.
Never, ever.
No.
But we do get an example of another old trope pretty quickly once they get to work. Because we get to see an example of the old violence in the workplace is funny trope.
Yeah.
Where somebody's in there choking Jeffrey Tambor or what have you. And then,
hey, I feel like choking some people sometimes. It's fine. Shut up.
And then Michael K. Douglas runs in there and breaks the fight up. And he says, everybody just calm down until he finds out he's getting fired. Then he turns around and he becomes the one to attack, which, you know, there's never a bad time for assault in a sitcom.
I do love how quickly Christopher Lloyd goes to suicide.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that I had no clue that Christopher Lloyd was in this. Like, not only did I have no recollection, but I think I looked at him for a solid 60 seconds before I knew who he was.
Oh man, the second he speaks, you know who it is.
Oh. I think he's on screen a while before he speaks, isn't he? Like in the carpool? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, yeah, he's in the back seat of the car and stuff. Yeah.
Once I realized it was him, though, I was kind of shocked because I've never seen his hair ever look like it does in this movie.
Like he
not crazy.
Exactly. Regular hair. Normal person hair.
Because you got to think he's probably on Taxi still when this movie comes out, right? 83.
Yeah. And on Taxi, his hair doesn't look like this.
Yeah. Reverend Jim's hair is crazy.
You got to bring it down a notch for the people.
You know, one of the things that I got to talk about too is the house itself, right? Because the house is basically a character and informing you what's happening to their lives.
Now, you could do an edit of this film where the whole damn house is haunted. All you got to do is change some music cues and maybe a couple of color timing things, and this could be a very different movie.
It's true.
A lot of touches about that house felt very much like the house I currently live in too. So I got a little bit of a hoot out of that.
The nice thing about the production design is that it really does make the house a character. So, and not only that, but this is before Hollywood decides that everyone's going to have ridiculously giant homes and you're just like some normal ass family. Like, this is a house that's a very nice house, but it's not something where like, oh, we spent $12 million on this. You know, like there's none of that.
There aren't 15-foot ceilings, you know.
Right.
Do you think anybody's done a master's thesis on home inflation in the movies? Because even in the Money Pit, that house that they were throwing all their like sanity into wasn't that great by like modern movie standards.
It's true.
That would be an interesting topic for somebody that's, you know, has a foot in both of those worlds to kind of analyze that sort of thing. But that's interesting. I like that.
I'm a double major in filmmaking and real estate.
Yeah, like there's somebody that's got to know a little something, or a real estate guy that's a wild ass.
There's definitely
film
somebody there.
YouTube, find it.
Yeah, there's somebody that's done everything by now.
I got to ask you guys something. What are your feelings on Martin Mull?
This is curious because I've been having the same exact kind of thoughts myself while watching this movie.
If my thoughts on Martin Mull are very pro Martin Mull to the point I don't know that I've ever felt terribly disappointed by him. I even liked him when he was a guest on the new Smothers Brothers show in 1986.
My main Martin Mull, honestly, and this is going to show that my age and everything, of course, and I've seen him in plenty of things, so don't think that this is the only thing. I don't want anybody to just be like, holy shit. No, but he was a large character on Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Oh, yes, was he?
Yeah.
Yep.
And honestly, like, he was good. He was Martin Mull in the character, quite honestly. But, you know, if that's who you're hiring, he's doing a damn good job of it, you know?
He was good on Roseanne, proving that a flesh bag of human garbage can surround themselves with incredible talent.
It's but yeah, I'm always confused with him. I'm never quite sure what to think.
I always think that he's pretty solid as an actor, right? Like, and you know what you're getting when you're hiring Martin Mull. Like, you know exactly what you're getting when you hire him onto your show or movie. But there's something outside of the movies and his character work that I find so completely unfunny, because I know that he used to be a stand-up comic. And so whenever, you know, there's like some retrospective on the Sunset Strip or whatever, and he's on there with like Robin Williams, it's just like I'm watching two people try so desperately to be funny, and they're just not funny at all.
He is spoken about in a very, you know, big terms and stuff by a lot of folks. A lot of folks have a lot of very nice things to say about Martin Mull.
Well, the thing that he does have is that he is unique to himself. So, like, you know, like that talk show he had, Fernwood Tonight, like, that is so many people, like 1,000 careers are spawned from that idea, and it was his. And so, like, that's a great idea. And he also was like, hey, I'm kind of unlikable. Let me get the most likable person on the earth, Fred Willard, to be my sidekick. That is a smart move.
Yeah.
And so, you know, things like that I understand. And that's the stuff that I like about him. I like him when he's acting, like if he's playing a role in something. It's whenever I see like, oh, hey, I'm going to do a quick 5 on the mic here, I'm like, yikes, don't do it, Martin Mull.
One of the questions. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I thought his stand-up was mostly like acoustic guitar and a stool and singing funny songs too. So I really don't want to hear him slinging new material.
No good.
One of the questions I actually wrote while watching, I didn't write many things, but I just wrote, are we supposed to think Martin Mull is attractive?
Maybe not. Maybe that's the point, is in the 80s, all dudes thought they were attractive without, like, they didn't. Mirrors, men were like vampires in the 80s. We couldn't see reflections in mirrors.
Yeah,
so we really thought we deserved better women.
It's like you could have bad hairlines, a crummy mustache and stuff, but as long as you had enough game and heart in your soul, you were just ready to rock and roll with any broad that came along.
Man, listen, you just got done seeing Michael York as a sex symbol, like 5 years prior to this. Michael York, for God's sake. Michael Caine was considered an attractive man. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. Like,
what was was it the French Connection that made women drool for Popeye Doyle?
Maybe, yeah. Gene Hackman, big sex symbol.
Woo!
So, like,
Louder.
You might have noticed. People Magazine ain't putting them on the cover of that one particular issue. So that's kind of neither here nor there with the 80s. The only thing that's missing from Martin Mull, quite honestly, is the coke, right? But I guess it's 83, so like you're probably not going to add that part unless you're kind of going against the grain of what's happening comedy wise.
If this was a family comedy, it's a family comedy. Had this been a little more National Lampoon esque, you might have had a little of something of that in there. It's close to coke. We're still in primetime cocaine time here in 1983
for sure. But you're not putting it on screen yet.
No. He's probably doing.
That's a go-to for his characters. I get it now.
His character is doing a little cocaine before, like when he's getting that champagne and everything, there was some cocaine before that happened. You could tell by the way he's moving. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know why it took me this long to realize it, Sean, but I think the biggest part of my like weird quote unquote loyalty to Martin Mull may come from Arrested Development because he's so much fun on that show.
He is great on that. Yeah.
So I want to ask you guys something. Because we see here what I think is the birth of the infomercial dad who struggles with even the simplest tasks.
Right.
And not only does he struggle, but he does like things so ridiculous that you need to have some kind of weird brain injury to cause disasters this bad. Can we talk a little bit about some of the just stuff that he does and also some of the things that are considered not him failing, which are the actual failures, or that the filmmakers sit and realize like, you don't give a 7-year-old the keys to your car and say, run, fetch my pants.
Right.
like that is not portrayed as one of the bad stuff he does. But
which, by the way, on that age and everything, my when I was like, I'm going to call it 7, maybe even it had to be younger than that because my brother was in a diaper at the time. We had ended up getting the keys to Dad's car. No keys. No keys were involved. But it was back in the day when you could just throw a car in reverse. You know what I mean? So we were playing Batman in the car. My brother was Robin, and old Robin decided to throw the car in reverse. And so the car started going backwards. And all of a sudden, Robin decided to jump out of the Batmobile.
Oh wow!
Was it a stick shift?
No, this was. I don't know how. I don't know how it works. But sure, shooting. We started rolling backwards there and everything. He jumps out like in the middle of nothing, and like I kind of rolled back into a ditch. Nothing really crazy happened. Neighbors came out. You know, wild times ensued and everything, and we were just like, we're fine. Everything was okay, but we were so this stuff happens where all of a sudden kids can just start flying across the yard when you're not looking because we were prime examples.
Circa 1978, my mother had borrowed a red pickup truck from my Uncle James, and it was a stick shift. And in Wayne County, West Virginia, she's picking me up from the babysitter. She sets me in the car at 4 years old, 3.5, something like that. Not even using a car seat, throws me in the front seat because back then pickup trucks didn't have back seats.
No.
And she's talking to the babysitter, and I just reach over and knock the stick shift out of gear, and she hadn't set the emergency brake. She just left it in gear thinking that was as good as an emergency brake, except I knocked it out of gear at the top of a big steep hill. So this red pickup truck rolls down this hill with me in it as a toddler.
Oh no.
And it goes backwards like tailgate first through a lady's house. And because it tailgate first, it killed the momentum enough that I didn't get hurt at all. But the lady who lived in the house got hurt really badly. So that is, and that wasn't a Mr. Mom situation. That was a Mother Mom situation. But boy, I have bad memories about kids being given keys to the car. So I'm just going to say my children went under my watch. We're never in a car alone.
At least I did my story first. Oh my goodness.
The worst thing that my parents would do during that time is they would literally lock the doors to the house and put us outside. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to open the doors at lunch. It was like that.
There's water in the hose. We will fling sandwiches outside. I didn't even get to come in for my lunch.
That's about the worst.
Yeah, and at least it was only 98 degrees that day.
Right. Well, I mean, Connecticut. I mean, it's not going to get that out.
It's pretty ridiculous. Some of my summers when I was locked out, but at least it was a trailer park because they don't hold the heat or anything. So let's talk about the washing machine here.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does he do to this washing machine that's so bad? Now, I understand he mixes a bunch of chemicals like an idiot, something that's very surprising for an automotive engineer to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also just cram a lot
just
of
throw
stuff
the oil and the transmission fuel and blah, blah. So a little far-fetched there. That's why they're trying to walk that line between blue collar, white collar, because a lot of white collar dads might actually be very comfortable doing laundry. But I know that if you put too much soap in it, it'll like overflow and you get soap suds all over the house. But I don't know that putting like all the chemicals in too much soap makes it start jumping back and forth like that. That'd have to be more like a load balance issue.
Yeah. I will say this.
They do imbalance the load because they shove it as much as they possibly can.
Again,
Once again, I
something
would
else
say
that an
that-
engineer would be doing big time.
I was going to say an automotive engineer has to understand how a Wankel engine works, and he would
Of
avoid
course.
Wankeling. Yeah.
Of
And-
course.
And then somehow it affects the plumbing because he put too many chemicals in. But here's what I really like is how, just like any other sane person on earth, they schedule 3 repair people to all come to the house at the same time. That also happens to be the first day of a new job. Like, yeah,
So
any sane
dopey.
person's going to do that. And
So
he's
dopey.
trying to cook chili at the same time, and they're all coming and going. And I really start to pick up on the way this movie loves to code lesbians. Because we got 2 versions. We got the white collar lesbian when she gets the advertising company, and then we got the TV repair person. And it's funny because, like, they're absolutely from a time when, well, of course, if a woman has a full-time career, she must be a lesbian. Like there was no like explanation or like, wow, don't you think it's kind of weird? No, it's like assumed. It's just sort of like how everyone's boss was white and nobody asked why.
I only wrote 2 things for the entire movie. We talked about the other one is Martin Mull attractive. My other thing that I wrote down here is cable repair girl looks like Amy Poehler's older sister.
Amy Poehler would be good in the remake. The character she plays in Mandalorian would be perfect.
She's
Not Andy. I know, but the other lady. I'm sorry, Sedaris.
You're talking about Sedaris.
Yeah, I apologize. My mind's not the best.
But she does. She looks like Amy Poehler. Amy Poehler would absolutely destroy that role
Yes,
today.
she would.
It was so good.
She would.
Please make that happen. If we're gonna do this, do it again. Have Amy Poehler, please.
The biggest,
Talking about Lindsay Nope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Leslie.
Leslie Nope. Jeez, my brain is broken.
The biggest surprise to me during all of that isn't the coded lesbian. It's the fact that at the end of the movie he throws a shoe and it breaks a TV tube. What is that shoe made out of? And
Yes.
then the biggest surprise of all is that she comes in and she goes, we're gonna fix this TV. We're gonna get a new tube. That's cheaper than just buying a new TV, buying a whole new TV tube.
I was going to say, for people who may not know, a television in 1983 was 83% tube. Like, strangely, televisions were mostly cathode ray tube back then. Also, we're reaching a generation that is never going to understand why that joke doesn't work, because we're probably running out of ne'er-do-wells who actually try to bust unsuccessfully cathode ray tube TV screens, which I'm sure you and I have both failed to break them before when we've tried to, Sean.
Oh, well, look, I can tell you how to do it because I've had to do it for my job, but
it ain't easy.
The CRTs, it definitely isn't, and it holds electricity for a lot longer than you think. So don't mess with that if you have the possibility.
So if you're using a bat, go wooden.
If you really want to break a CRT, be careful.
If you want something that explains the way I think, when I was very young, I used to love to turn off our CRT television when all the lights were off and touch the screen quickly and watch the sparks fly.
Oh, yeah.
So that may have affected my development.
No, you did.
I think you're doing just fine.
If anything, some of us should have touched some electricity more. Yes.
Touch my TV, baby. I do like it that it's not all a big box of fluffy ducks at the advertising job either, though.
Right.
Because on the first day, she walks into a smoke-filled shouting room. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like, everybody, let's go into this room and shout. And it's that Hollywood thing where outside of how thick would you say that door was?
Well, I don't know about how thick the door was. I was looking at how thick the smoke in the room was.
Well,
oh, my God.
What I'm saying is, I would say that the door was 4 inches thick max. And I don't think we're talking like solid fire door. I think it's like a particle board sandwich hollow door. And yet it goes from completely silent to the floor of the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago during Ferris Bueller, like the moment she walks through the door. And I gotta say, I'm a sucker for doing that in like sound design. I love it when the ridiculously like impractical sound kicks in, because it just seems like it just makes sense to my brain because I've been like conditioned to appreciate it.
That room is what I imagine the Saturday Night Live writers' room sounded like in the 70s.
No, yes.
Just everybody in there. And I love how close and upfront we are with everybody, and they're smoking, and like I said, the room is filled with smoke. We close up on people, on ladies smoking, just like right at it. It's great.
Yeah, agreed.
But I also like how, like, within her first day and everything, this raises no flags for this character at all. Of how, like, you're here for 5 seconds, all of a sudden you're in this big giant meeting and we're giving you everything just you go at it, have at it. You would just be the star of the show here. Like, she even admits it. She's like, listen, I've only been here for like 5 minutes. I don't know that I'm qualified to do this. She goes, listen, lady, you get up and you do your damnedest. You don't think there's any kind of red flags here for this woman?
If you want some perspective, Adam, just think of what was his name? Ron Richardson. Just think of him as the prototype for Don Draper, Adam, because that's what they're going for is a little Mad Men atmosphere here with the smoke and the men.
It's almost the exact same thing, really.
I mean, he looks the part.
But I love how, at least, because like he is super creepy, he is super bad. I am at least thankful that the movie did not go down that path of like, both of these people are horrible when put in horrible situations. None of them, like, they're not the best. They all could say things earlier within all of the time frames and stuff, but no one's out here like actively, like cheating on anybody and everything. So this family film doesn't become, kind of gross and skeezy.
Right.
Well, I do like it that they kind of cover, oh man, in some weird way. I'm watching this today and I'm like, this is an instruction book from the television writers that came in to replace John Hughes. It's an instruction book for how a housewife should act. They start off by showing you the version of what you don't want to be as a housewife by having him doing his day drinking and watching soap operas while the kids run around. Because, that was one type of housewife that would be depicted in media back then.
Right.
And then,
pill popping.
Oh yeah, we got Mother's Little Helper. I mean, when the Rolling Stones write a song about it, something's going down.
Now, what do you think about the lady who's obviously the reason Aquanet made such huge profits in the 80s? This Ann
Well, you're talking about Ann Jillian.
Yes. What do you think about Ann Jillian's character?
Ann Jillian clearly wearing a wig. I don't know why they have her wearing a wig in this movie. Maybe because they didn't want, because she has, like, her hair doesn't behave like that. Like, her hair is like flat.
It looks like the wig is made out of like the stuff, like you would make like a kid's wig at Halloween out of, like really, really like the low quality polyester fibers or something.
It's really bad. Like, my wigdar isn't perfect, but even mine was going up. Adam, yours must have been going crazy. You have the best wigdar of all of us.
This whole, there's tons of stuff in here. And there's also times when there should be wigs, but there's not. Like your Michael. There's so many guys where you're just like, Jesus, get this man a wig.
Jeffrey Tambor needed a nice Buster Poindexter pompadour.
That would be hilarious. I would watch that just on principle alone.
No kidding.
You guys think Jeffrey Tambor's character worked a day on the line?
Jeffrey Tambor's character's such a bitch. I hate him so much.
Yeah.
Jinx is his name, man.
He is written so well because you just hate him. He's a scum bum and you're just like, oh. But at the same time, too, I think we've all had somebody like that at work at one point or another. And you're like, yeah, that rings true.
Yeah.
Did either one of you see a nugget of Beetlejuice in Keaton's performance here?
Little bit.
Well, there is something that is definitely undeniable Keaton in this. For sure. Yeah.
I think at the time I originally watched it, when I was a kid, didn't make those connections. But now I think he just drops his voice an octave, makes it a little gravelly, goes into the Beetlejuice, and some of those lines are Beetlejuice lines.
Oh, without a doubt. To get back to Ann Jillian for a second, Ann Jillian gets interviewed in that, let's say, 2000 documentary retrospective on Mr. Mom. And to give you an example, she's talking profusely about how great Michael Keaton is on set during this movie because he's got all of the weight on his shoulders. It's his first movie where he's the headliner and he has to improvise a lot of his own dialogue. And she goes, you would have to walk behind him with a notebook just to keep up with him because his brain works so fast. The only other time I've ever experienced that from another actor on set is Mickey Rooney.
What a comparison.
Mickey Rooney. So Mickey Rooney and Michael Keaton,
They got that
same
in
level of performance.
Oh man, Michael Keaton. Why didn't he get that Breakfast at Tiffany's role?
Oh my God, he would have been perfect at that. Yes.
Also a good song and dance
Movies like this, when I was young, gave me a very unrealistic expectation about how easy it would be to meet ladies when I grew up. I just got to say that.
Yeah, no kidding. Everybody just like, I do like how like lecherous these women are at the same time too. You know, she's just like, hey, she's married. She's like, yeah, so were we once.
Yeah.
I really thought you just have to be a man in their presence and the women wanted to come around. It doesn't work that way.
He looks good in the beard though, don't he?
He does.
He's got, it's like it works enough for him at times. Yeah. It's like if you trimmed it up and looked, you know, obviously he's meant to look disheveled, but if you trimmed it up a little bit, he'd look all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And with those glasses on, he would fit right in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when he shaves his beard, which signals to us that he's now ready to be like the perfect housewife. Like they don't want to make him the perfect house dad. They want to make him the perfect mom. That's the title, Mr. Mom. So they're showing us what they think a perfect mom should be like, and they have Michael Keaton do it. And that includes getting all those lazy fat housewives to do a little aerobics every morning like a good wife should do.
Slapping them on the ass.
Yes, like that's what they think is an idea of making the world a better place. The idea of
it, though?
Just arbitrarily for no reason taking your 4-year-old's whoopee away. And they call that a parenting victory. I call that infliction of childhood trauma. Like that kid is going to grow up to be a comedian now. And you know who's to blame as dad for taking that whoopee away.
I will say this. It's not like the kid's 16 or something. You know what I'm saying? That is still
school age.
That's a pretty small child.
But you're not wrong. But here's the thing, right? Is that you don't want to go too far along with that because you're going to end up with a massive problem in like a year, 2 years, if the kid still has the thing. It's not the movie isn't wrong about that. Like both my daughters had blankets.
Oh, clash of parenting styles.
My
kids all still have whoobies if they want them.
Oh man, my girls, they had their favorite blankets. Both of them did. And so you just wean them off. You don't just take it away. You wean them off. And so it would get to a point where one day that they just don't ask for their blanket anymore. Or as they called them, bankies.
Boy, my brother had his little blankie for much longer than you would ever want to admit to. Right, Mark? He wouldn't. He don't listen to the show, but if he did, he'd be like, "Oh, don't talk about that, please." Way longer than what, and it was like, that thing should have been destroyed long ago. It was just like it looked like from a Fallout game.
My parents were so neglectful. I was never allowed to cherish anything in the first place.
You keep your cherishing to a minimum, young man.
I slept on a cinder block, unadored cinder block. That's all I was allowed as a child.
Now, let me ask you this, boys. As two fathers yourselves, how do you feel about just the breadth of the world just saying dad's a dum-dum? Dad's never smart.
A whole lot less of it now than there used to be.
I don't know.
I'll just say that. A whole lot less of it now than there used to be, but
unless it's a commercial for something.
It's whatever, man. Like commercials or something I pay attention to these days. I could care less. Actually, I couldn't care less. I care so little. Anyway, for all tint colored purposes or whatever they say. I don't know. What were we talking about?
So he's asking about the dumb dad thing.
It doesn't bother me. I don't care. Whatever. Just, I don't know how it might bother you, Sean, but whatever. People, I've been underestimated my whole life. I don't care.
It didn't bother me to the point where I wasn't able to enjoy this movie. Like I still enjoyed watching it. It's a well put together movie, and you get to see Michael Keaton turn into a movie star before your eyes. Like those two things are pretty amazing about this movie. Also, just the level of like, as long as it's not in the script, everything else about this movie is very well done. Like the script itself is kind of dumb, but everything else about this movie is a well put together movie.
I'm going to say a subtle genius touch is when they go to the exotic all male review, because he handles that like a champ. And by 1983 standards, he definitely handles it like a champ, because I mean,
he's not projectile vomiting.
A bunch of homophobia and him proving he's not gay. And, you know, the whole joke is everybody thinks he's gay. And he just had a good time. He accepted the guy's number without making a big deal about it. Then when the guy couldn't see anymore so that he wouldn't hurt his feelings, he gave the number to the ladies.
It's true.
I mean, he handled that like a charm. He didn't try to like get inappropriate with the girls. He really came out on top there. And that was something that's handled with enough subtlety that it surprises me. Like, it doesn't belong in this movie, because it doesn't handle anything else with any kind of complexity. It handles it all with like, what does the least intelligent ticket buyer in our least sophisticated market think?
Do you think
that's true? There's also no homophobia in the movie.
But do you think that dancer's going to call that lady, though?
Maybe.
I'm going to say maybe not.
Probably
Come on
not.
now. We're going to say no.
I don't know, you know, beginning to end, the whole story, who does what, how they feel about things. But I feel like they give a pretty good, I guess I feel like they give maybe a little bit more subtlety to the male point of view on this one than they do the female. Is that fair to say? Like, I think this movie being made now, we're getting just as much character development from Terry Garr as we are from Michael Keaton, but I feel like her character, minimal development compared to what Keaton has.
I think she was fine.
You're not wrong. And also, they wouldn't have had, the only reason why they hired her in the first place was so that Martin Mull could bang her. Like, there would be like it would be out of, you know, her, like her own work ethic is what got her the job. So there's that part too. But I was surprised at just how much they gave Terry Garr in this movie. They don't give her nothing. Like, they do give her quite a bit.
Yeah.
In a movie that was made in 1983.
And that's not hers. It's not her movie. It's called Mr. Mom. So but for not being the title character, she's got more of a MO than most other characters of that nature.
But I'd say in 1983, she's a bigger name than Michael Keaton.
Oh yeah. I think that, well, she was in far more movies at this point.
Yeah.
But it was still surprising. Like, you know, a movie this early in the 80s, you know, you're and you're the second build person and you're a lady, they're not going to give you a whole hell of a lot to do. But she has a bit to do in this movie. I was pleasantly surprised, because Terry Garr in, you know, the mid 70s, early 80s is in every single movie ever made. And she's good in all of them. Like, she's hitting the notes that you need her to hit.
And Terry Garr is someone who I always think of. It's like, I remember her being like pretty by those standards, but not pretty by today's. And then I see her and I'm like, wait, no, she's a pretty timeless beauty there.
It's a good looking lady.
And,
she's a good looking
she always
lady.
surprises me that way, because I kind of like think, well, she's in dated stuff and I'm not going to see it look back, but I look back and I still see, like I sent you guys in a text, I would have been cleaning the house.
Now, if you can see through sometimes, especially like in your 80s and stuff, if you can see through some fashion and hair and a couple and makeup choices and stuff like that, you can go like, oh, you know what, that's still a good looking person there and stuff. So, and she definitely qualifies for that category. And again, she carries what she does. She doesn't have a ton of things to do, but with what she's got, she runs with it quite well and everything. And you feel like she could stand up in front of that room and, you know, address those people and stuff like that. And they gave her enough of a tiny backstory, but a little bit, it's like, hey, I've kind of done a little bit of something like this before. And when you see her perform, you kind of believe that. You go, okay, yeah, all that seems to add up.
How surprised were you, Bruce, when the week before we had made the joke of, you know, when the kid from Kate and Alley shows up, like we had literally made that joke. And then kid from Kate and Alley shows up in this movie. Were you surprised by that?
You know, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that.
I was very surprised. I was like, holy shit, we just made that joke last week on the show.
Yes.
So
go ahead.
I was going to ask, so we got to ask ourselves here, Michael Keaton, is he doing it in this movie? Is there anybody that could replace him, or is this kind of just a singular Michael Keaton performance here?
This is tough because I think the only person that you could have fill these shoes is probably Tom Hanks.
I was going to say
Tom Hanks is filming Splash across the street.
I was going to say that you will not get anything close for what they paid Keaton. Is what I don't know what they paid Keaton. Like, I don't know what the amount was, but I'm going to guess they couldn't have gotten a replacement who was close to as good for the price he got. Where this is his first big role, I imagine they got him cheap.
I think you could probably find anybody to honestly fill the role, to be honest with you. Will the movie be the same if you get anyone else for the role? The answer is no. I think he brings a certain singularity to this that is that Michael Keaton kind of je ne sais quoi, if you will. But the role itself, I think, could be played by anyone else, but it would not ultimately end up in the same results category that this movie does.
You make it 5 years later and it's somebody like Bob Saget, and it totally loses some of its edge.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite work.
Or you're going to have, like, I mean, it is 1983. You're going to have someone like Chevy Chase.
Oh my god.
Yeah, here's the thing. Chevy Chase could do this role, but it's a different movie at that point, because we're leaning into the more Chevy stuff as opposed to what Keaton's doing. So while you could have the same movie, it wouldn't be the same movie, if you will.
And he's going to be way more of a horn dog with Terry Garr.
Also going to be like, he's going to be way meaner but less intimidating, and it doesn't work because you need that little bit of masculinity still popping through for Mr. Mom, which Chevy Chase, it's more like he's going to be in a scene dressed as a damn French maid by Act 2 somewhere.
Yeah.
Hey, it's what he wants to do. Just leave him be. All right, let's get down to it, boys. Movies only come in two forms. We all know that. That's art and fart. Bruce, where does Mr. Mom come down for you, sir? Art or fart?
Well, before I reveal the ultimate, I do also want to mention that I read just a little bit about a very recent Mr. Mom television show on Apple Plus. I've never seen it. I don't know if it's any good or not. I don't know if it actually made it or if it was like in pre-production and never happened. But the story is the baby, the little girl who is the youngest, when she grows up, her husband loses his job. She goes back into the workplace while he's home with the kids. And we get it from mom's point of view instead of dad's in the TV show.
Boo!
But anyway, I haven't seen it, but I want to mention that it sounds awful, but this movie, I love it. I'm going to say that it's art. We'll see what you guys think. How about you, Jonathan?
I would say it's art. I mean, the magic of this movie is Keaton himself. You see a movie star for the first time in this movie, which is fascinating since it feels like Michael Keaton's been around from when time began. He was a movie star, it felt like to me, because that's the age I'm at. So that part is completely fascinating to watch. Also, the production design on this movie is just terrific. There's people coming in to do to drink a cup of coffee and leave. Those people are great in this movie too. Also a lot of faces that used to be in movies that are probably no longer with us, but it was good to see them again. Because I was like, oh yeah, that guy, he was in everything when I was a kid. Oh, that guy, he was in everything when I was a kid. That's cool to see too. And like you said at the top of the show, Bruce, this is a real time capsule. Jokes aside, this is a time capsule of what it was like to be a middle-class family in 1983.
For me, it is... I'm just going to go ever the slightest over to fart. I like the movie. It's good enough. I agree with all of Sean's kind of recommendations there and everything. There's a lot enough to qualify for it. And I think if it's a movie that you haven't seen and you are a fan of one Michael Keaton Douglas, then this should be something that you check out. And again, to see that early kind of gestation of what Keaton's kind of doing and where his career would kind of go and again, Sean, you're very much correct in how, like, it feels like he's very much almost fully formed within this movie itself, this early in the career and everything, and it feels like we've got such an actual handle on who Michael Keaton is, you know. But at the same time, too, the toughest part for me is that this movie, I feel, has probably a little bit of a rewatchability problem with it and everything. It is a little gaggy. It is. It's okay. I think it's good as a come across as an addition to the man's filmography and everything. But I don't know that it's one that people need to rush out and see. But I don't think that you would mind if and you actually had to see it. So that's just a never so slight fart, a toot, if you will, over here for me.
I think I think if you hold Michael Keaton in high regard, you have not seen this movie, you should see it.
Yeah,
but I can't imagine being 17 years old and being like, man, I need to see Mr. Mom. You don't.
No, that's not gonna. This movie's not gonna light your world on fire with that. We're not. This isn't the one that's gonna do it for you. If you're not a Michael Keaton fan, this one isn't gonna be the one that just kind of all of a sudden turns on the faucet for you. I don't think. Certainly at that age.
Right.
Well, that is it, everybody. That is our third Michael Keaton picture in the record books, and we've got our next one coming in just a second. Sean, tell us about next week.
Next week, we are going to be seeing Jackie Brown. Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, his follow-up to Pulp Fiction. The movie, if you're wondering, is it as good as Pulp Fiction? No. But it is it a good Tarantino movie? Yes. So if you haven't seen it, check that out.
It's one of those things with his movies where it's just like, you know, even something that you would consider like his lesser work is still better than most other people's best work. So you're just like, you know, even then you're just fine with it. So yeah.
Also, if you want to see what I would say, 80% of American men who they considered to be the hottest person in the world at that time, I can't remember her first name now. Bridget Fonda.
Yeah.
In this movie, the world abound. If in America at that time, good luck finding somebody who doesn't find her attractive.
You
during
just
that time.
salute like it's the flag.
She had a moment. Singles was a fond one too.
Yes,
and
but this was the one that really brought it over the top.
So many great performances. We're going to have a fantastic time next week talking about Jackie Brown. Until then, John, where can we find other things from us on the internet?
All right. So I have a YouTube channel where I take video of me scooting around on my e-scooter. Oh. Check that out on the YouTube. Also, I got a new show coming out very soon called Shawnzy Like Spaceships, where each week there will be 10 episodes, and each week I will be reviewing a movie that has spaceships in it, and hopefully hidden gems that you have never seen before.
Bruce, you got anything to pitch?
I'm working on a music video for an original song about how to wipe your eyes after drops are put in, and it's called Dab Don't Rub. So be on the lookout for that on your local social media platforms.
Very nice. I like that. Hey, do me a favor. Follow me over on the TikToks, Adam Portress. You know what my name is and everything.
Hey, I'll endorse Adam's TikTok too. It's like, even if I didn't know Adam, some of them are pretty enjoyable.
I try to do a little funny thing here and there. I try to do an informative thing here and there. I try to, and every now and then there's a cry for help. You never know what might happen over there. So
and follow my TikTok if you're into matching sheds.
I don't know what the hell that means, but you need to follow his TikTok to find out for it. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for Jackie Brown, for Bruce Leslie, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet. I'm Adam Portress, reminding you that the only difference between art and fart is an F.